Hello everyone, my name is Zenitsu and I'm back with another Digimon deck profile video. So today I'm going to be going over another BT-05 deck, and this time it is going to be a rather interesting deck just because it is more of, I guess, a tribal deck where the whole theme of the deck is centered around utilizing Greymons to their utmost potential, and there's a whole bunch of Greymon support and synergy, not only just within the set but outside of the set, that you could utilize it to make really interesting and varied builds. But for the most part, this is just the build that I'm settling on, just because what this deck can do is still very, very powerful, and there's just a lot of varied tools to really just handle a lot of different situations, making it just a very versatile deck to be playing around with. So going over the deck, starting with the Digitama, I'm going to be running one copy of Sakuttomon. So this is the 5th Digitama, and it could really be anything you want it to be. I just feel like Sakuttomon is really decent because he has this nice inheritable ability of when attacking once per turn. If this Digimon is level 7, then you get to gain 1 memory. And we are playing a couple of different level 7s, and you could obviously build your deck around a more level 7 focused build, but that just makes Sakuttomon more powerful just because gaining that 1 memory could matter depending on how you utilize the card. But again, being the 5th Digitama, it could really be anything you want it to be. So if you want it to be like a Digimon, a Koromon, a Poromon, it doesn't necessarily matter what you're going to be utilizing, it's just going to be the 5th Digitama slot. And then as far as the main Digitama, that is going to be 4 copies of Koromon. So this is the new Koromon in BT-05, and this Koromon is absolutely fantastic for the deck just because it is finally giving Red access to a Digitama that allows you to draw cards. So what it's doing more precisely is it has the inheritable ability of when attacking once per turn, if this Digimon has Omnimon or Greymon in its name, then you get to draw 1 card. And Red really was lacking a lot of draw power that the other colors were playing with, so them finally having a good draw engine definitely is really good for the color, but it's really good for the deck overall because it helps the deck's overall consistency, and we are going to be running a couple of different Omnimons and Greymons to utilize Koromon with. Next, on to the rookies, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Monodramon. So Monodramon is a pretty decent rookie still just because he has very efficient stats where he is a Digimon that hard plays for 2, evos for 0, and has 3000 DP, just making him a really good card to be running. Next, I'm going to be running 2 copies of Agumon. So this is the BT-01 version of Agumon, and this Agumon is pretty decent because he has this nice on-play ability where we get to check the top 5 cards of our deck, then we get to add 1 Tamer among them into our hand and place the rest on the bottom. So what makes this card really good is the fact that in the context of a raising meta, you're going to be building a Digimon in raising, and then sometimes you're going to want to hard play a couple of cards just to get something on the field, and when you do that, you want your cards to have as much value and impact as you possibly can. So this Agumon having an on-play ability definitely helps fit that bill, on top of which it's digging for your Tamers, which we are running a couple of different Tamers in the deck that we do want to see. So not only is it helping us look for our Tamers, it's also acting as an Agumon that we could just hard play and not feel bad about. Next, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Agumon. So this is the BT-05 version of Agumon, and we're playing this Agumon for very similar reasons why we were playing the BT-01 version of Agumon, just because it is an Agumon with a nice on-play ability that also helps us look for cards. So the cards that it's looking for is it's revealing the top 3 cards of our deck, and we get to add 1 Digimon with Greymon in its name and 1 Digimon with Omnimon in its name, and then put them into our hand, and then the rest go to the bottom. So this does have the potential of whiffing, but most of the time you're going to be adding at least 1 card in your hand, at best 2 cards in your hand, and that's a really good level of draw power and consistency that just helps the deck function overall, making this Agumon a really good Agumon to be running. And then the last rookie of the deck is going to be 4 copies of Agumon. So this Agumon is the starter deck version of Agumon, and this Agumon is really good just because he has a very generic inheritable ability of during your turn, this Digimon gets plus 1000 DP. So this affects all of our Digimon, not just our Greymons. There is an Agumon that does only affect Greymons, but the boost is bigger, but we want our cards to be as powerful and impactful as we possibly can, so I just feel like the generic 1000 boost is a little bit better for our cards overall. Next, on to the champions, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Greymon. So this is the BT-05 version of Greymon, and this Greymon is really good because he has a very strong native ability and a very good inheritable ability. So his native ability is a when digivolving ability. If we are digivolving on top of an Agumon with this card, then we get to gain 1 memory. So the whole idea is we're going to hard play an Agumon, and then the Agumon on the field we could then utilize to digivolve into this Greymon. Then we're going to gain the memory, and it's almost like he basically evoed for 1, and that's just very tempo efficient to try to get the Digimon that we have on the field to be as powerful as it possibly can be, as quickly as it possibly can be. But even if you don't digivolve him on the field, his inheritable ability is still really good, where during your turn, while this Digimon contains Greymon or Omnimon in its name, then this Digimon gains plus 2000 DP. So it's almost doing a very similar thing to what the BT-01 version of Greymon is doing, except it's limited to Omnimons and Greymons. But considering the majority of the deck is going to be Greymons and Omnimons, it's not like it matters that much. And the fact that it also has the leg up over BT-01 Greymon with its when digivolving ability definitely makes it a really good card for this deck to be utilizing. Next, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Monochromon. So Monochromon is the red blocker that fits in the new wave of blocker stat line, where it's 6 to hard play, 1 to evo, 5000 DP. So red and blue were previously missing theirs, while all of the other colors had theirs as of the last set. So now they're finally getting theirs, and now that they're finally getting theirs, it's a really solid card to be running, just because it is a blocker that evos for 1, so it's just another very tempo efficient card. And then on top of that, the only big downside to the card is the fact that it only has 5000 DP, so it is susceptible to a lot of different forms of removal, but the fact that it is still a blocker that evos for 1 is the main reason why we're running this card. But if you just want to run Koromon instead, then you're more than welcome to, just because Koromon's at 6000 DP makes it a little bit harder to get rid of and deal with. And then the last champion of the deck is going to be 4 copies of Greymon. So this is the starter deck version of Greymon, and this Greymon is looking to be really good still, just because he has a very nice generic inheritable ability of giving whatever Digimon he's digivolving into security attack +1, allowing whatever Digimon you're going to be utilizing to deal even more security damage onto the opponent, and that's just really good in general because it applies lots of extra pressure onto the opponent and could help close out games even faster. Next, onto the ultimates, I'm going to be running 2 copies of Lavogaritamon. So Lavogaritamon is a really decent ultimate to be playing, just because it is another tempo-efficient ultimate, where we're mostly going to be utilizing this card just because it has a very low evo cost of 2, and it also has 8000 DP. So pair that up with Agumon and Greymon, and it's a 9000 DP that can swing for 2 security checks, which is pretty decent, all for evoing for 2, and then you could utilize this card to digivolve into your megas that much faster and that much more efficiently with also. Next, I'm going to be running 3 copies of MetalGreymon Alterous mode. So MetalGreymon is looking to be another really interesting Digimon, just because he has 2 different ways you could play him. So the first big way is just like any old level 5, where he just evos for 3, and he even has 8000 DP, which is a little bit stronger than your average level 5. So that's making him really good, on top of which you also could have him digivolve on top of a level 5 for 1, so that way you could potentially try to draw more cards out of your deck in case you're stuck and you can't see a lot of your pieces. So just those 2 different ways you could evo him is very, very powerful. Then on top of which, he has 2 really decent abilities of his own. He has a nice when digivolving ability, where if you digivolved this card on top of a MetalGreymon, then you get to delete one of the opponent's Digimon with 4000 DP or less. So he's just acting as some solid removal as long as you're digivolving him on top of a Digimon that contains MetalGreymon in its name. So it could be himself, it could be a different MetalGreymon, it doesn't necessarily matter, it just is a MetalGreymon, and that's pretty okay. It's not the greatest removal ability, but something is better than nothing. But the primary use of this card is going to be with his inheritable ability, where during your turn, while this Digimon contains Greymon or Omnimon in its name, then it gets a plus 2000 DP. So it's just acting as another DP booster, and that's just pretty good, making sure our Digimon are as strong as they possibly can be. And then the last ultimate of the deck is going to be 3 copies of MetalGreymon. So this is the starter deck version of MetalGreymon, and this MetalGreymon is pretty good considering it has the nice inheritable ability where during your turn, when this Digimon is blocked, you get to gain 3 memory. So being blocked is usually a really bad thing, and we don't want to be blocked, and this card helps de-incentivize the opponent from blocking us by allowing us to gain 3 memory, and that could be a lot of potential memory to be working around with, especially with how much the game has changed, so that 3 memory could be more devastating now than it was in the past, making this MetalGreymon just a really good card to de-incentivize the opponent from blocking, so that way your attacks could actually get through, and then if they do block, then you're going to gain the 3 memory to do even more powerful things with. Next, on to the Megas, I'm going to be running 2 copies of WarGreymon. So this is the BT-01 version of WarGreymon, and this WarGreymon is really powerful for the deck because he has this nice when Digivolving ability of giving himself security attack +1, so that allows him to deal even more damage. Pair that up with the starter deck Greymon, and he could potentially hit for 3 damage off of his 1 swing, and on top of that, he also could potentially have DP boosts or the ability to de-incentivize the opponent from blocking, so he's just a really good card to be playing just for that first ability alone. And then on top of which, he also has another ability where during your turn, this Digimon doesn't activate the security skills of any options that are checked. So not only can he hit really hard, but he also has the ability to take out the opponent's security options from the equation, making his swings really safe. On top of him being DP boosted, could also mean that he's going to win a lot of potential security checks, and with Koromon, you also get to draw a card, so he's just doing a lot for the deck, and that's kind of why we're just running him. On top of which, he evos for 3, and evoing for 3 is just really important, just because a lot of the plays that we're going to be making are based around 3 memory. Next, I'm going to be running 3 copies of BlitzGreymon. So BlitzGreymon is just another really powerful Greymon for the deck to be playing around with it, just because, yes, he evos for 4, which is a little bit unfortunate, but he does have 12,000 DP, making him naturally stronger than a lot of the other megas that we could be playing around with. And then what this card is doing that's so good is he has 2 abilities native to him. He has the piercing ability, so when he attacks and deletes an opponent's Digimon, then we still get to perform a security check, so even if they do block, then they're still going to be taking the damage, so piercing is just a very strong keyword to be playing around with. And then on top of that, he also has a nice when Digivolving ability, where we get to de-Digivolve 2 on one of the opponent's Digimon, thus setting them a little bit further behind, even though it's not deleting the Digimon, although it potentially could because of its unique interactions with Digiburst, but I digress. And this is still just a really decent ability to be playing around with to just buy yourself some time and get rid of a threat off of the opponent's field, so that way it forces them to try to rebuild or crumble under the pressure. And then the last level 6 that I'm going to be playing in the deck is going to be 2 copies of BlitzGreymon. So BlitzGreymon, yes, is another Greymon, and yes, he does evo for 3 and have 11,000 DP, similar to WarGreymon over here, so his stats are very comparable, but he does have a very powerful when Digivolving ability of Blitz. So what the Blitz ability is doing is this Digimon can attack even when the opponent's memory is put to 1 or more. So this is a really good way to just help close out the games, just because you could try to break all of their security, then Digivolve into Siege, and then even if the memory passes over onto the opponent, then you're still able to attack it, and that extra attack could potentially help close out the game. On top of which, he also has a really nice inheritable ability, which is rather rare to see on level 6s, but his inheritable ability is during your turn. When this Digimon attacks with Blitz, it can also attack your opponent's unsuspended Digimon. We are going to be playing a level 7 with Blitz, and being able to pick off the opponent's Digimon is definitely really good and helps add to the overall control aspect that we could be playing around with. Speaking of level 7s with Blitz, next I'm going to be running 3 copies of Omnimon. So this is the BT-05 version of Omnimon, and this is a really good Omnimon considering he evos for 4 off of red and blue. So the previous Omnimons all Digivolve for 6, so he's just a little bit more efficient with the trade-off of only losing 1,000 DP to his stat line. So he's just a really good Digimon to be utilizing, especially since we have so many buffs in the deck we could make him hit 15, 16, 17 or more very easily, so it's not like the minus 1000 actually matters. But he has 3 abilities that's making him very, very powerful. His first ability is a when digivolving of Blitz. So the Blitz ability, as I mentioned before, allows the Digimon to attack even when the memory goes over to the opponent's side. So that's really good at closing out games where, again, you could swing with, let's just say, WarGreymon over here, and then break the opponent's security, then Digivolve up into Omnimon over here, and then be able to get an additional attack out. So whether that's attacking for even more security or closing out the game, it doesn't really matter, just that extra attack is really good, and what's making him have that extra attack is his other when Digivolving ability of unsuspending this Digimon. So that's what allows you to swing with 1 level 6, then Digivolve into this Omnimon and get an additional swing with Blitz. So that's just really good and really powerful, especially in combination with Siege, where that extra Blitz attack can attack into the opponent's unsuspended Digimon, and that's really powerful because it allows you to actually control the board that way. And then on top of all of that, his third ability is also looking to be really good, where during all turns, if an opponent's effect would delete this Digimon or return them to the hand or deck, then you get to prevent that by trashing 1 level 6 Digimon from his inheritable sources. So that's really powerful considering he has his own built-in protection, thus allowing him to be even stronger than some of the other cards, just because having some protection is better than having no protection. And then the last level 7 of the deck is going to be 1 copy of Omnimon X Antibody. So Omnimon X Antibody has the same stats as all of the other Omnimons, except that he has the unique ability where you could Digivolve this on top of an Omnimon from your hand for only 3, and you get to ignore any other Digivolution requirements. So Digivolving a level 7 on top of a level 7 is really interesting, so it allows you to utilize your cards even more. And then on top of that, he also has a really nice when attacking ability of deleting one of the opponent's Digimon with DP less than or equal to this Digimon's. So basically, he could just delete almost any Digimon in the game because we're going to be pairing him up with a couple of DP boosts. So he could delete a wide variety of Digimon, and that's just a really good level of removal to be playing around with. And then on top of all of that, he even has an ability where during the opponent's turn, when your opponent's Digimon attacks it, you get to trash it 2 cards from this Digimon's Digivolution source to just end the attack. So that's just really powerful because it could shut out the opponent from actually trying to aggress, and it allows you to aggress it that much easier, all for ditching any evolution source, and that's really good considering you could Digivolve them on top of level 7s for even more inheritable sources than they normally would. So it's just looking to be a very powerful Digimon for the deck to be utilizing. Onto the Tamers, I am going to be running 1 copy of Marcus. So Marcus is going to be the deck's dedicated memory fixing tamer. So if our memory is ever less than 3, he'll just hard set it to 3, and that's really good because that's the type of memory we're going to be basing a lot of our plays around. And then on top of that, he also has another ability where during your turn, when one of your Digimon with Greymon attacks, then we get to suspend this tamer to gain 1 memory, which is just pretty decent to be utilizing just because we could utilize that 1 memory in some various different ways to either enhance our next plays or try to set the opponent a little bit back on their memory, and that could be really, really good no matter which way we utilize it. But the main tamer of the deck and the star of the deck that's really making everything come out as powerful as it possibly could be is going to be 4 copies of Nokia. So Nokia is an absolutely fantastic tamer for this deck. Yes, she is a white tamer, but she hard plays for 3, and she has 2 abilities where she has a nice on-play ability where we get to play 1 Agumon or Gabumon from our hand for free. So Nokia does synergize very nicely with any of our on-play Agumons, so we could play Nokia to play this Agumon to try to draw potentially 2 cards, or we could utilize Nokia with this Agumon to try to help dig for our other tamers. So it's not like she's a bad card to utilize for any of our Agumons, which we are playing a lot of Agumons in the deck. And then the primary use in which we're looking to utilize the card for is going to be her main ability, where when we Digivolve one of our Digimon from our hand that contains Greymon or Omnimon in its name, then we get to suspend this tamer to reduce the memory cost of that Digivolution by 1. So she's just making us Digivolve on the field that much more efficiently, and that level of efficiency could allow us to tempo faster than the opponent to get something going before them and really start controlling the field or aggressing as hard as we possibly could be, all thanks to what Nokia is doing. And then, like all other Tamers, she has the classic security ability of being able to be played for free, which is really good, especially in combination with her on-play ability, so that way we could play potentially a level 3 off of our security off of this card, and we could utilize that ability to also try to help close out the game with, especially if they don't have anything to respond with. So Nokia is just the complete package on what this deck is doing, and she is the best tamer for this type of deck to be running. And then there's just a whole bunch of other cards that you could utilize, all depending on what you're looking to gain out of the deck and how you want to change up the deck given the context of the meta or environment that you're going to be playing it in. So if you wanted to, for another really good on-play ability, then you could play the Promo Agumon. So this Promo Agumon has the on-play ability, which you'd get off of Nokia, to delete one of the opponent's Digimon with 3000 DP or less, so it's helping with the control aspect that you could lean into with the deck, or you could continue a little bit more of the aggressive route and you could play the other Promo Agumon that increases your Greymon's DP by 2000 while it's in its inheritable sources. So it's just another really good Agumon to consider playing. And then if you wanted to, you could also think about playing a little bit more into the aggressive side of things by adding in some Greymons. So the Promo Greymon, while you have an Agumon in its inheritable source, it'll gain security tack +1. So out of your raising, it allows you to draw and deal damage a little bit faster than what the opponent might be anticipating out of this style of deck. And then you could even also consider running Agumon if you want to change up your tamer lineup to accommodate Agumon to try to help close out the game with, just because, you know, hybrids are really good at just closing out the game, especially if you could hit the opponent's security really hard, really quickly. And then speaking of tamers, you have a whole bunch of other tamers that you could also think about running. So you could think about running Tai and Matt as one of the better duo tamers that we have access to. Then we also have access to BT-01 Taikimiya, which is another memory fixing tamer. So if Marcus isn't doing it for you, then this Tai definitely might. And then you also have Takumi to help you draw cards for just Digivolving, and red is a color that's not necessarily known for having good amounts of card draw. So Takumi helping you draw more is already looking to be pretty good. And then on top of all of that, we also have Mega Digimon Fusion to try to play our other Omnimons even more efficiently than they normally would be able to. And then speaking of our Omnimons, we do have a couple of other Omnimons we could consider running. So you could consider running Omnimon Alterous, just because the D-Digivolve one on all of the opponent's Digimon and then deleting all of their Digimon with 5000 DP or less is still really good. And his when attacking ability to basically make himself unblockable is still pretty decent. And then you have the OG Omnimon back in BT-01, where his when Digivolving acting as some good removal is really nice, but with Mega Digimon Fusion, you'd be mostly looking to gain the multi-attacking ability from this Omnimon to try to swing, clear out their security, then swing again, close out the game. Then we do have access to some other really decent level 5s, all depending on your type of build to help push the deck forward. So we have access to BT-01's secret rare MetalGreymon just to act as another MetalGreymon, and we really only care about his inheritable ability to just give the Digimon plus 3000 DP, which is just really good, and it affects any Digimon, not just the Omnimons and Greymons. And then we also have WarGreymon, where again, depending on your shifts and divergences in builds, then you could utilize him to use his Digiburst ability to play your red and yellow tamers for free. And then on top of which, he has a nice when attacking ability to reduce one of the opponent's Digimon's DP by 2000. So it could help in combination delete a whole bunch of different targets. Then we also have access to some other really decent Greymons to consider utilizing. So we have Victory Greymon, which has Digiburst 2 to delete one of the opponent's Digimon with 8000 DP or less, so just another good removal tech card. And then we also have the new WarGreymon from BT5, where he has the native ability of when Digivolving. If you have a Digimon with Greymon in its name in your inheritable sources, then you get to delete one of the opponent's blockers, and blockers can be kind of annoying sometimes, so having a good way of getting rid of them is always nice. And then he even has another when attacking ability to delete one of the opponent's Digimon with 3000 DP or less, so as an example you could pair that up with Rise to delete Digimon that are 5000 DP, which is just pretty decent from attacking with your level 7s. And then we just have a couple of other really decent options to think about playing, so you could run Gravity Crush just to gain the 2 memory, to try to make a very powerful play hop pin and a very powerful push turn, and we don't necessarily care about losing the 2 memory or basically giving the opponent 2 additional memory at the beginning of their turn, because if they can't utilize it, then it doesn't necessarily matter, or if we utilize this card to win the game, then again, it doesn't really matter what the downside is. And then as far as other removal tech options, you could run Trident Revolver just to try to delete Digimon with 6000 DP or less and play a Tamer for free, which is pretty good. Then you have Transcendent Sword to act as just some more large body removal, and this card's even more powerful with a Greymon or Omnimon on our field. And then we have access to the classic Gaia Force, one of the best removal options in the game, so that's just another good card to consider running. So this just goes to show that there's just a lot that you could do with just the simple concept of just playing your Greymons and utilizing different synergies. So one of my favorite things that I like to do with the deck is I will Digivolve into WarGreymon in a single turn, reduce the evolution of that to whatever based on the amount of Nokias that I have on the field. Then get the when Digivolving ability to gain the additional security tech, hit the opponent's security for at least 3 thanks to Greymon, so that way I could bust 3 security checks with the options not checking, and then Digivolve right afterward into Omnimon because the Security Tech Plus will transfer over to this Omnimon. Then this Omnimon will unsuspend with Blitz and be able to swing into the opponent's security, thus taking out the rest. And if an option is checked in there, then he's going to have a very high chance of living through the option just because he does have some protection native to him. The only unfortunate thing about this Omnimon is the fact that the protection doesn't stop DP reduction, so that is one thing to keep in mind. But again, this is just one very powerful line of play that you could be possibly thinking about. So it's just a really interesting deck with a whole bunch of high synergies and different ways to play it. And it's a really fun and powerful deck to be playing and to build around. So that's all I really have for this video. As always, feel free to tell me your thoughts down in the comments below, and down in the description below are different ways that you could support me in the channel. So one of those ways is I do have a TCG Player affiliate link, so whenever you use that affiliate link to buy cards off of tcgplayer.com, then some of the money will go to supporting me in the channel. And on top of which, I also do stream over on twitch.tv/Zenitsu. So following and subbing is a good way to support me over on that platform as well. And on top of that, I also do make and sell playmats over on Overcard Gamers on Facebook. So whenever you buy one of my designs through them, then some of that money will also help go to supporting me in the channel. And as always, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content, and I'll see you in the next video.